Hello there. Welcome to the How to Build a Coping Skills Toolbox parent workshop. So I'm so happy that you've taken the time to watch this recorded session. I hope it's going to be helpful for you. So I always like to start with a land acknowledgement. I think that it's so important that we recognize the land that we're on, and think about, who was here before us, and who will be here in the future. So we here in the Durham region respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Mississaugas of Scugog Island. So my name is Kim Sundal. I'm one of the social workers here at Durham Catholic. I have the privilege of working in some of our elementary schools and our secondary schools. And, talking about coping skills is something that I do all day long. So I'm really happy to share some of my experience with you. So the agenda for this workshop is I wanted to give you the opportunity to learn a little bit about stress, and think about stress in maybe a different way than you have before, and also some of the most effective coping skills. So there's lots of strategies out there. And so based on what we know now about stress and the brain, what are the best fit? Also, some ideas about how you can learn to support your child or adolescent, so some specific strategies that you can use, and also lots of resources for your kids and for you as parents. So I wanted to start just with a quick video on how stress affects our brain.
Are you sleeping restlessly, feeling irritable or moody, forgetting little things, and feeling overwhelmed and isolated? Don't worry, we've all been there. You're probably just stressed out. Stress isn't always a bad thing. It can be handy for a burst of extra energy and focus, like when you're playing a competitive sport or have to speak in public. But when it's continuous, the kind most of us face day in and day out, it actually begins to change your brain. Chronic stress, like being overworked or having arguments at home, can affect brain size, its structure, and how it functions, right down to the level of your genes. Stress begins with something called the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, a series of interactions between endocrine glands in the brain and on the kidney, which controls your body's reaction to stress. When your brain detects a stressful situation, your HPA axis is instantly activated and releases a hormone called cortisol, which primes your body for instant action. But high levels of cortisol over long periods of time wreak havoc on your brain. For example, chronic stress increases the activity level and number of neural connections in the amygdala, your brain's fear center. And as levels of cortisol rise, electric signals in your hippocampus, the part of the brain associated with learning, memories, and stress control, deteriorate. The hippocampus also inhibits the activity of the HPA axis, so when it weakens, so does your ability to control your stress. That's not all though. Cortisol can literally cause your brain to shrink in size. Too much of it results in the loss of synaptic connections between neurons and the shrinking of your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain that regulates behaviors like concentration, decision-making, judgment, and social interaction. It also leads to fewer new brain cells being made in the hippocampus. This means chronic stress might make it harder for you to learn and remember things, and also set the stage for more serious mental problems like depression and eventually Alzheimer's disease. The effects of stress may filter right down to your brain's DNA. An experiment showed that the amount of nurturing a mother rat provides its newborn baby plays a part in determining how that baby responds to stress later in life. The pups of nurturing moms turned out less sensitive to stress because their brains developed more cortisol receptors, which stick to cortisol and dampen the stress response. The pups of negligent moms had the opposite outcome, and so became more sensitive to stress throughout life. These are considered epigenetic changes, meaning that they affect which genes are expressed without directly changing the genetic code. And these changes can be reversed if the moms are swapped. But there's a surprising result. The epigenetic changes caused by one single mother rat were passed down to many generations of rats after her. In other words, the results of these actions were inheritable. It's not all bad news, though. There are many ways to reverse what cortisol does to your stressed brain. The most powerful weapons are exercise and meditation, which involves breathing deeply and being aware and focused on your surroundings. Both of these activities decrease your stress and increase the size of the hippocampus, thereby improving your memory. So don't feel defeated by the pressures of daily life. Get in control of your stress before it takes control of you.
So, it's wonderful that you're all here learning for your kids, but it's also so important, some of this information for us as parents as well. Some of those epigenetic changes, how we manage our stress and how we show our kids how to manage their stress, you can see has impact for generations. And I think that as we become more aware of the changes in the brain, with some of the scanning technology that's around today, we're able to see what the changes are, and we're able to see how some of the strategies that people use can change brain development in a good way. And being here trying to help your kids also, stop some of that more entrenched development that could be troublesome. So where does stress come from? You can see in the video, stress leads to heightened arousal. So whenever we're experiencing lots of stress for a long period of time, we are going to see heightened arousal. So changes in our heart rate or cortisol, the stress hormone, it'll be firing much more during times of stress. Usually stress is perceived as aversive. Sorry, it's something that we don't want to have happen to us. It's something that doesn't feel good or isn't desired. And so stress usually falls into that category. And there's usually some degree of lack of control. So some degree of an inability to kind of manipulate that situation or, have it under our control in some way. Really, it falls into two camps as far as what the different kind of coping skills are for stress. There's emotion focused and there's problem focused. So on the left-hand side, you'll see all of the kind of goals for emotion focused coping skills. So it's really helping kids understand their feelings and how to cope with them. Lots of times kids don't have feelings vocabulary. And so sometimes it's just helping them understand what different feelings are, how they can kind of notice it on their faces, what kind of triggers they might, notice in their bodies, and different coping skills. It's teaching them how to tolerate stress. So lots of times we can't stop stress from happening, but we need to learn how to tolerate it and use our coping skills to manage. Emotion-focused coping skills are best suited for situations where we can't change. So where the situation cannot be changed and we need to learn how to survive it. Emotion-focused skills apply best to those situations. Problem-focused involves obviously taking action. So attempting to change that situation. They're best suited, obviously, for situations that can be changed. And it really is about empowering someone to problem solve and to take control of a situation that can be difficult. And by using these different coping skills, we can manage that experience of stress. So what are coping skills in general? We talk about them a lot and we don't always take the time to really explore what are they. So coping skills are an individual's effort to regulate their emotions, so their feelings, their cognitions, so their thoughts, their physiology, so what they notice in their body, their behaviors, and situations that they can regulate. And it's all in reaction to stressful events or challenging situations. So it's really anything we do to change our emotions, our thoughts, symptoms in our body, behaviors, or even situations. Those are considered coping skills. Coping skills in general, they help to diffuse or turn down the volume of a stressful situation or an intense emotion. So again, when we turn down that feeling, that intense emotion, and we make it just a normal emotion, it just gives us more opportunity to have some increased control over our stress or over our response to the stress. And there's basically a number of coping skill genres or coping skill areas. So you'll see them on the right-hand side. So self-soothing, opposite action, distraction, emotional awareness, and mindfulness. And I'm going to spend some time kind of going through each of these. So let's start with self-soothing. So self-soothing is really about engaging your body's natural calming system. So we have lots of physiological stress responses, but also calming responses. And so by using some self-soothing coping skills, you're really kind of re-engaging in those relaxing, calming systems and really kind of retraining your brain to use them more regularly when under stress. So some of the common self-soothing coping skills are deep breathing. There's lots of science around the effect of deep breathing. Tensing and relaxing are major muscle groups, so that's called progressive muscle relaxation. Meditation or guided imagery, and visualization. So these are all of kind of the basic relaxing skills that can help us activate our self-soothing system. You'll see on the right-hand side just some examples. So there's bubble breathing or candle breathing, where someone is kind of practicing, inhaling, so smelling a smell and then blowing out a candle. And same with bubble breathing, kind of trying to blow, breathe in and then blow gently a bubble. Blowing out the pizza, similar to the candle, where you're smelling in the smells of the pizza and then you're blowing on it because it's very, very hot. Square breathing or infinity breathing, where you're tracing either infinity symbol or a square and you're breathing in on one side of the shape, and then you're holding it for another side of the shape, and then breathing out for another side of the shape, and then holding it. And that's something that kids can use anywhere because there are squares, or they can draw an infinity anywhere. With the infinity, you're kind of starting in the center of the infinity symbol, and then you are tracing around it. So going around one side of an infinity symbol, stopping at the center, and that would be breathing in, and then going around the other side of the infinity symbol and breathing out. Spaghetti body is an example of progressive muscle relaxation, where you have kids kind of imagine being stiff like spaghetti, and then being able to kind of relax their bodies a little bit. So here's a video on the science behind deep breathing. I think that lots of times people think deep breathing is just such a basic strategy, can't possibly be doing anything, but there is lots of science behind it that I wanted to share with you.
An ability to control your levels of stress in real time is extremely powerful. It turns out you can do this using physiology and neuroscience. Your breathing can directly impact your heart rate and your level of stress or calm. Here's how it works. When you inhale, your diaphragm moves down. This creates more space in your thoracic cavity, and your heart actually gets a little bit bigger. As a consequence, the rate of blood flow through that larger heart volume slows down. A signal is sent from a group of neurons on your heart called the sinoatrial node. That signal goes up to the brain, and your brain sends a signal to speed the heart up. In other words, inhaling speeds your heart rate up. The opposite is true as well. When you exhale, your diaphragm moves up. Your heart gets a little bit smaller because there's a little bit less space in your thoracic cavity. As a consequence, blood flows more quickly through that smaller volume. The sinoatrial node registers that and sends a signal to your brain, and the brain sends a signal to slow the heart down. So in other words, inhaling speeds your heart rate up, exhaling slows your heart rate down. So if you want to speed up your heart rate and be more alert, inhale more or make those inhales more vigorous, more intense. If you want to calm down, you can do that quickly by making your exhales slightly longer than your inhales or making them more vigorous. This doesn't require any breath work. This is something that you can do in real time. And that's what's called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. That's the technical phrase. It's also the basis of what's called heart rate variability, or HRV. But all you need to remember is inhaling deeper and longer will speed your heart rate up. Exhaling longer and more intensely will slow your heart rate down and will allow you to calm down in real time.
So for those of you who it's a very, very deep, intense explanation, but it really just explains how it's legit. Breathing is a simple thing that we can do, but it changes our physiology, which is such an important coping skill. So opposite action. So that's activities that generate an emotion or an experience that's counter to the distressing one. So by engaging in opposite action, we're actually distracting ourselves a bit, having our minds kind of focus on something that we really like, which is usually the opposite of the situation that's stressing us out. So this is enjoyable activities, so things that people like to do, movies, drawing, music, anything that they really, really enjoy. For some people, it's exercise. We know that there is so much biologically physiology that changes when we're involved in exercise. And so for some people, that opposite action of exercise can counteract some of the stress hormones and some of the changes in their body that's happening with stress. Watching a funny video or a funny TV show, laughing, smiling, joking, that's an opposite action of feeling stressed. Some people will have kind of their happy music playlist. And so kind of really tuning into the music, the lyrics, the instruments being used, in an effort to do something opposite to stress. And then gratitude practice. There's been lots of research into the benefits of gratitude practice. And gratitude practice is essentially just really focusing on the things that we're grateful for. And one of the things that they're seeing in scans of the brain is that can make a huge difference. And it really kind of retrains our brain to see the world in a good way. So you'll see on the right-hand side an acronym that lots of people use to practice gratefulness, and it's so glad. So something that you're grateful for, something that you learned, one small accomplishment, and something that delighted you that day. And lots of times spending some time at the end of the night to do a glad practice can be helpful. Distraction. This is when we're redirected to more pleasurable activities. Using things that engage our smart brain. So one of the things that we know is when we are thinking with our emotional brain, we can feel lots of emotions. And so by engaging our smart brain, we're encouraging our brain to think more rationally and use that part of our brains. So calming activities, listening to music, painting, drawing, mind-occupying activities like puzzles, baking, playing a game, reading, coloring, anything that you have to really focus on and really pay attention to. Talking to someone, journaling. These are all things where if you can really focus on them, your mind is really, really activated, your thinking brain as opposed to your feelings brain. And sometimes creating a coping skills toolbox that includes some of these activities that people can quickly use when they need to. I love this video because I think that the hand model of the brain is a really cool way for us to understand the different parts of our brain and what they do, but also a video that can really help kids understand that.
Ever felt a big reaction to something and not known why? Here's a way to help you understand your brain and manage your behaviour. The hand model of the brain. The bottom of your hand represents the brainstem and is involved with the automatic physical processes that keep us alive, like breathing and our heart rate. Your thumb is your limbic system, and with your brainstem forms part of your emotional brain. This helps you to manage and understand your feelings and stress responses. The outside of your hand and fingers are your cortex, or your thinking brain. When the thinking and emotional brain work together, it's easier to manage your emotions, talk with others, and problem solve. But if you feel surprised, unsafe or scared, your emotional brain takes immediate action. It can act much faster without working with your thinking brain, so you flip your lid. If you're in real danger, acting fast can help keep you safe, and that's really important. And then when the danger has passed, your lid comes back on. Your thinking brain is back in control. But sometimes we flip our lids when we don't need to. How we think and behave isn't helpful. You can practice putting your lid back on by breathing slowly or by spending time with someone you trust. This tells your emotional brain you are safe, and it can work with your thinking brain again. Now your whole brain can help you manage your behaviour and your feelings.
So such a great way for kids to kind of understand how their thinking brain and their emotional brain kind of interact, and why they may overreact at certain times. And so good for us to understand too, when we're dealing with that. So another skill is emotional awareness. So that's activities that promote emotional exploration and increase clarity. So this is really activities where we get in touch with our emotions and our cognitions, all in an effort to cope or to manage a stress. So some of the cognitive coping strategies are really using coping thoughts. So being able to think through a situation, think about another possibility, or whether there's evidence for situations, really just thinking positively about a difficult situation, trying to look for the bright side or the glass half full. Self-affirmations, so using quotes, using kind of positive statements. The more people repeat these, the more automatic their mind goes to them when they're experiencing stress, rewiring the brain to do that. Journaling, so journaling some of our experiences, using that as an outlet, but also as a way to focus on ways that we can handle situations. And then increasing emotional intelligence. So lots of times, like I'd said before, kids don't know their feelings, they don't understand them. And so using different tools to help them understand what they're feeling, and maybe how strong they're feeling it, and what they can do to bring that experience down. So you'll see on the right-hand side some of the strategies or tools. So using a feelings thermometer, being able to teach kids that we have different range of feelings based on different situations, and using kind of that thermometer analogy. Using detective thinking, so having kids kind of look at the situation like they're a detective, and what is the evidence for or against a situation? What's a different way that someone could think about a situation, and trying to be rational about that? And similarly, putting your thoughts on trial, same kind of idea, using some rational strategies to kind of think through a situation. Here's an example of a feelings thermometer, so you can see the different range of feelings, and you can also see on the right-hand side some of the strategies that people can use. So having kids come up with the feelings at different ranges of the thermometer, how they might show that or notice that, but then also things that they can do at different levels to feel better. And here is some ideas of automatic negative thoughts on the left-hand side. So that's some of those automatic thoughts that we might have during times of stress about ourselves or the situation or the world or others. And so on the right-hand side, you'll see some of the ways that people can challenge that or be more of a detective with it. Some questions that they can use to kind of think about things a little bit differently. I'm going to spend a bit of time now talking about mindfulness. Kind of like gratitude practice, mindfulness has really, there's been lots of research into this as a specific strategy to kind of adapt the brain to manage stress. So here's a video just on the science of it.
Researchers have known for decades that meditation can improve someone's physical and mental health. It can relieve stress, lower blood pressure, and lift someone's mood. But only in the last 10 years have neuroscientists taken a serious look at the changes in brain structure underlying some of meditation's benefits. Like everything else we do, meditation rewires our neural circuits, pruning away the least used connections and strengthening the ones we exercise most. Studies looking for signs of these changes usually focus on mindfulness meditation, which challenges people to keep their attention fixed on their thoughts and sensations in the present moment. Scientists acknowledge that many of these studies are small and not ideally designed, but at this point, researchers have gathered enough evidence to be confident that their findings are not just flukes. Experiments suggest that Buddhist monks have really robust connections between scattered regions of their brains, which allows for more synchronized communication. Expert meditators also seem to develop an especially wrinkly cortex, the brain's outer layer. We depend on the cortex for many of our most sophisticated mental abilities, like abstract thought and introspection. Several studies have confirmed that meditation can increase the volume and density of the hippocampus, a seahorse-shaped area of the brain in the middle of the skull that is absolutely crucial for memory. And although areas of the brain responsible for sustaining attention usually shrink as we age, meditation counteracts this decay. An increasing number of studies show that meditating for as little as 12 to 20 minutes a day for several weeks can sharpen the mind. In these studies, meditators have scored higher on tests of attention and working memory, which is the ability to temporarily store and manipulate information in one's mind. Some lifelong meditators in their 50s and 60s can even outperform 20-somethings on tests of visual attention. So if you're interested in trying meditation, you should probably start as soon as possible. For Scientific American's Instant Egghead, I'm Ferris Jaber.
Such an amazing thing that we can help our kids with. It's something that we knew about meditation years and years ago, but the research is really proving how amazing it can be to develop those parts of our brain that can help relax us, but also affect memory and some of those other things. So mindfulness is really focusing on being grounded in the present. We spend a lot of time thinking about the past, what we should have done, and the future, what we need to do. And so mindfulness is really just staying focused on the present. So grounding exercises like counting breaths, counting or subtracting by sevens, counting the colors that people can see around the room. 5 senses grounding, that's an activity where people are focusing on 5 things they can see, 4 things they can hear, 3 things they can feel, 2 things they can smell, and 1 thing they can taste. And really, these are all about being focused on all of the senses around the current situation that you're in. And when you're focused on that, you're not thinking about the past or the future. One of the things that kids really love, it's one of their favorites, is mindful eating activities. And this is something where they take a certain food or whatever they're eating and just really slow it down. What do they smell about the food? If they're touching it, what does it feel like? What does it sound like? What does it taste like? And really slowing that process down. You'll see the app there, Smiling Mind, which is an amazing resource of all different mindfulness activities for kids, to teenagers, to adults. They have mindful practices based on different situations, so test taking, parenting, everything. And so it's a really amazing resource if you're thinking about kind of getting into mindfulness a bit more. Now, problem-focused coping skills. So obviously, if we have a situation that we can solve, we should try because that alone will reduce our stress. So asking for help, encouraging our kids to ask us or to ask an adult, because we have more experience with how to solve problems. And so by asking us, we can share that with them. And then engaging in problem solving. So using some sort of method or some sort of strategy that kind of helps them get focused on solving the problem. So, identifying the problem, maybe developing at least 5 possible solutions. So not kind of narrowing ourselves down to one, coming up with a number of them, identifying the pros and cons of those solutions so that you can make the best choice, and then trying it out. And, kind of slowing kids down and helping them see that that's how we can solve a problem can sometimes be really, really helpful. I always include this slide because I think it's so important that we focus on, how we can improve our mental health. Some of the things that we can do are, I guess, basic in some ways, but can have a huge difference. So lots of research is going into mental health, and they've realized that by making an improvement in even one of the areas that you'll see on the screen, it can help other ones. So obviously sleep, huge benefits to our mental health and our health. But also, can connect with physical activity. The more physical activity we have, the better our sleep can be. You can see how all of these things kind of go together. Healthy eating, a well-balanced diet, and encouraging our kids to eat well-balanced meals and to avoid some of the food that triggers them in some ways. Again, super, super helpful. Social connection, being connected with friends and people who are important to them, having those positive interactions can really fill our bucket. Helping out is a big one. So what we get from gratitude practice, but also giving back in the community in some way, opening the door for someone, picking up garbage in the community, just doing those little things can really fill our bucket even more. And then reducing substances. This is maybe doesn't apply as much to little kids, although, more and more, one of the substances, I guess, that kids are using is technology. And so, keeping, their ability to stay engaged in the real world and limit their tech use can be really, really helpful to their mental health as well. So you'll see on the screen some websites for parents. These are a number of websites that you can access that will give you information on different stress, triggers for kids and how you can help them. So the Kids Helpline, BC Children's Hospital, Coping Skills for Kids, and the Kids Health Hub all have specific sections for parents. Some apps for kids, obviously Smiling Mind made the cut, but also Booster Buddy and Bouncy, the People Trainer. These are two apps that are really focused for little kids and really help them kind of understand stress, understand their feelings and how they can cope in an age-appropriate way. So if you're looking for some apps for your kids, those are really helpful. And then obviously there's community support. So if you're trying to do some of these more basic coping skills and they're not kind of addressing things, there's also tons of resources in our community. So you can see on the top right, there are crisis lines that you can access, Kids Help Phone, the Black Youth Mental Health line. We also have in the center some of the counseling agencies in our area. So Catholic Family Services, Frontenac that focuses on youth, and then Kinark that focuses more on younger children. And they have intake processes. You just would look them up online and they would their websites would walk you through that. There's also on the left-hand side, you'll see the social work access line. So that's an access line with Durham Catholic. It's manned by Durham Catholic social workers. So not a crisis line. If you're in crisis, it's not the appropriate place to call or leave a message because it is more of a planned response. But if you have a question or you're wondering about a resource, completing the online form or leaving a message on the number you'll see on the screen, one of the social workers will give you a call back to explore that. And then Durham Community Health Center, so that's formerly known as CARIA. That's a fantastic resource in our area for medical supports, counseling supports, health supports, and again, by going on their website, you'll see all that they have to offer. So that's all that I have for you. I hope this has been helpful for you and helps you be able to help your child understand stress and what it does to our brains and our bodies and some of the ways that we can manage that a little bit differently. Thanks so much for taking the time.